So my name's Justin Stephen. If you haven't met me before, everyone who has is probably super jealous of you. But I work in application security, so I love software, bugs. People tend to make the assumption I'm a penetration tester. Not sure if it's the hair, not sure if it's the breaking stuff, but I work with software. I work with software bugs. So I have a favorite bug class, which I want to talk about today. By the way, two things. Having a favorite bug class is how you know you don't get out much. Second thing, do you want to hear about my favorite bug class? Not a good pickup line. So I want to talk about race conditions. So I'm sure many of you are aware of them. I'm going to be doing a mile-wide, inch-deep run-through of some of the instances of race conditions that I've come across or found or heard of and just really appreciated because some of them are quite nuanced. And the thing about race conditions, as the last one will indicate, they happen everywhere. They're just crazy prevalent when assumptions are made about things. So if you haven't heard of race conditions before, a race condition is a vulnerability in a computer program or a system where assumptions are being made about the order that things are happening in, and those assumptions get violated. There's a subset of race conditions referred to as a time of check, time of use bug. And that's when there's a difference between the time that a computer checks something and then uses the thing that it just checked. And computers, everything is separated in time. It may be by milliseconds, but if you're really quick, you can sometimes change the thing in that little period of time. So we'll go through what this is. Can everyone read this code? I'm hoping it's readable. In fact, if we full screen it, does it get a little bit bigger? Maybe that's a bit bigger. So here's some Python code, overly verbose Python code. If we run a function, check a thing, if that returns true, then we're going to do a thing, right? So in the case of a Python program, it's going to run top to bottom. But it's not necessarily the fact that when the thing is being done, that the thing that was checked is true is still true. Things can change, of course, if it's a single-threaded program and it's not using any shared resources such as file systems or databases, then it's probably going to be pretty static. But yeah, computers are kind of slow when you look really closely. And there's a brief window of time. First of all, there's a brief period of time inside the check a thing function, where the check a thing function is like, I'm checking something, I'm comparing it, okay, it looks good, I'm going to return a value. Between the check and the return, there's some time there in which another thread inside the same program or something else on the system that's accessing the disk may modify the thing. And also inside the body here, I mean, there's not much space in this short function, but if this is a huge function, then there could be a massive amount of stuff being done in here, which would make the time between the thing being checked and used very different. Time of check, time of use bug. Let's go through some examples. This is the canonical one that anyone who's done CS 101 and done race conditions in university will probably know about. It's to do with transferring money between financial systems. And spoiler, this was probably the single most valuable thing I learned in university. Thank you, bug bounties. But so the idea is that when you're transferring money inside a financial system, right? You might do some sanity checking first to make sure, so this is just a Python function, we're going to transfer money from a source account to a destination account for a certain amount. So I'll do some sanity checking, make sure the amount's a positive number, because that's a cool trick. If you can transfer negative $10 to someone and take it, that's cool. But we're going to do some sanity checking, and then we're going to check to make sure that the source account, that the balance of that account is less than the amount you're transferring. If you've got $20 in your account, you shouldn't transfer 30. That's forbidden. After we've done that, we're going to increment the balance of the destination account and decrement the balance of the source account, right? That's how transactions work. If I'm transferring $20 to a friend, their balance goes up by 20, mine goes down by 20. So there's actually two bugs in this, well, three, but two different types of bugs. The first is a time of check, time of use bug in between the check as to whether the source account has enough money and the actual transfer being done. The other one is kind of in these plus equals and minus equals. Depending on how, whether the destination account, source account, a database stored or what have you, they're probably not atomic things. So if there's two happening at once, only one will actually really work. But that's for another day. We'll focus on the fact that there's a difference in time between this check of the balance and the use of the balance. So how it would look is if we're just doing one transaction, right? If we execute it on paper, A has $20, B has 0. A wants to transfer $20 to B. So the single thread of execution is going to go, okay, does A have less than 20? Because if it does, then we're going to have to bail out. No, it's got 20 or more, so we'll continue. The next thing we do is we add $20 to B's account, and then we take $20 away from A's account. Easy done. The thing is with financial systems is that concurrent transactions happen a lot. If a bank had to kind of queue up each transaction and do it one at a time, then it might not get all its stuff done in the day. So let's do 2 transfers at once. We're going to have A with $20 and B with 0 again. So the first instance of the person who owns account A transferring $20 to B is going to say, I want to transfer $20. And the first thread is going to check to make sure that the balance of A's account is at least $20. And if it is, we're going to increment B's balance. But at this point in time, we're going to do another transaction. And on this thread, we're going to go, does A have $20? Yeah, A has $20. We'll do another transaction. Increment B's balance again. In the first thread, we've just decremented A, so they've lost the $20 they sent the first time. Then in the second thread, we're going to decrement A again, and A has negative $20, and B has $40. So now this would be cool if A and B were friends. A's like, hey, let's double our money, and then you share the money that we stole, and you pull it out of the account, and we have both have some money. So I've never tried this with a bank. I don't know anyone who has logged on to internet banking and given this a go. If you want to do it, I'll visit you in prison to see if it worked. But where I did do it was with this thing. So Bitcoin actually protects against this by its own design, right? The way in which Bitcoin actually batches up transactions, puts them into blocks, and then the miners kind of sanity check each block, or they construct a block, they pick transactions, and they put them in the block, and go, does this block make sense? Is anyone spending more money than they've got, or double spending? No, that looks fine. We're going to mine that block gets mined, goes in the blockchain. Go to the next block. That makes it kind of hard to double spend money. Where I found it was possible to do it was on exchanges and web wallets, back in about 2013, 2014. Just get some water real quick. Did I bring my water up? There it is. So, found some Bitcoin exchanges and web wallets that have bug bounties, and did the trick where you sign up for 2 accounts. And how these web wallets work is you get a deposit address, right? So you sign up, and the system says, hey, here's your Bitcoin address you use to deposit money into your account with us. So you do an on-chain transaction using blockchain protocol to actually deposit money into that special address that's yours. And then the server's going to go, okay, when that address gets money, we know it was assigned to person A, so we're going to update a database row to increment their balance. So it stops being a protocol like the Bitcoin protocol and starts being its own closed ecosystem with database tables, which we can start to do this stuff with. And I did it to 3 exchanges. All 3 had bug bounty programs, and they all fixed it. Around the same time that I was doing, in fact, my speaker notes, because I don't know the details. So one company, Flexcoin, lost $600,000 because they had this bug and someone actually exploited it for real, and they folded. And then someone else lost, how much was it? Like $50,000. So someone did well. I didn't do that well. I just got the bounties, not the actual, Cayman Islands experience. But how I did this, and this is kind of the cheap and nasty way to do it, I've since learned of a better way. But all it meant was in Burp, I just turned Intercept on. Well, what I did was I opened up 2 tabs of the transfer money thing. Filled out the transfer. I want to do an internal transfer from this account on your closed system to that account on your closed system. I want to send all my money in both transactions. And I was going to get ready to hit send. Turn Burp Intercept on, hit send on both. Turn Burp Intercept off, they flood through, and they won the race condition, and I doubled my money. So that was kind of cool. I stole like $10 of Bitcoin each time I did it, just as a POC. And then I got the bug bounty, and I got to keep the $10, so that was kind of cool. But there's a more mature way to do it that I've since learned about. This sounds really cool. I haven't used this tool, but if I needed to do it again, I'd look into something like this. This tool uses a really cool trick, as far as I understand. So in HTTP, you can supply HTTP headers, and you've got this content length here, right? That content length specifies how big the body is, how big the post body is in this case. So if you wanted to send 2 HTTP requests really quickly with a post body, this tool opens 2 parallel TCP connections, sends the headers, and then sends the body, but I don't know if you're counting, but this body is actually only 27 bytes big. So you send everything except for the last byte, then in both concurrent TCP connections at the same time, just send the last byte. And that will result in the kind of timing being much closer, and for tight race condition windows, it might increase the chances of exploiting it. I just think it's a cool idea. Igor Homikov did this to Starbucks as well with their gift cards. So this is going to work in, I reckon, a lot of places. Gift card transactions online, like get a gift card, spend it twice really quickly, see what happens. Don't do that. If you do it, you didn't hear me tell you to do it. Get a gift card and see if you can do like internal transfers. It could work in a lot of places there. It worked for Starbucks. If you've got like a discount code, like a single-use discount code, use it twice really quickly. See if you can race the invalidation of that code. It just, these distributed systems, I mean, this happens to threaded code, right? So back a while ago, we were writing, threaded code. We knew about this. But it seems with web apps that maybe some of us forgotten that even if in your PHP or Ruby or Python or what have you, you're not writing with threads, the fact that the backend is in a scripting language and someone can create multiple HTTP connections at the same time, your application's actually threaded, but you didn't write threading. So web applications, money transfers, that kind of stuff, fun times. Mozilla, I'm going to be a jerk, is Seb in the room? Hey Seb. So these are Seb's bugs. Seb found these was 2013. Check my speaker notes, didn't actually have speaker notes. Seb found some bugs in 2013 in the Mozilla maintenance service, and these are cool bugs. So when you install Firefox, I believe it's an opt-out thing if you hit the advanced button and untick a box. You get something called the Mozilla maintenance service. And the Mozilla maintenance service is a Windows service. I think it also has one for OS X, maybe Linux, I'm not sure. But there is one for Windows, which is where this kind of concept was proven. This service is stopped, but it can be manually triggered by unprivileged code or userland code. The main reason this service is installed is so that Firefox itself can go, hey, maintenance service, wake up, there's stuff to do. So Firefox.exe, running as a non-admin user, can download what's called an update.mar file, which is a proprietary format that has the update for Firefox in it, or Thunderbird, works for both. So Firefox, as a limited user, downloads that, but as a limited user, it can't apply that file to program files, because program files, you've got to bypass you've got to authenticate via UAC to actually write stuff to that directory. So what Firefox does is go, hey, system service, wake up. I want you to do a software update. This is the path to the updated.exe file. We'll come back to that in a second. This is the path to a directory containing update.mar. And this is the path to the Firefox directory. Go and use the updater to apply the update.mar file to Firefox and update it for me. The system service wakes up because the system service, it can modify program files. Happy days. I'm not sure why Firefox can specify the path to updated.exe. From my brief spelunking in the code, maybe it's code that's changed over time, the path that you pass in, the file gets compared byte for byte against the one that sits in program files anyway. So I don't know why they didn't just use the built-in one. But they didn't, and so it was buggy, and so Seb got a local privilege escalation. So what Seb found out was that Mozilla was doing a couple of correct things with regards to handling this update.exe file. It was applying, first of all, it was checking to make sure it's on I think it's on a local disk, maybe making sure it's actually on C drive, and going, okay, cool, if it's on C drive, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to write lock the file and tell the OS, hey, don't let other processes write to this file. Then I'm going to verify it byte for byte against the real update.exe. And once the verification is complete, I'm going to run it. Because the file's write-locked, someone shouldn't have been able to do the switch and erase the verification. The time of check of the signature, or the byte for byteness, and the time of use of execution, there's a gap between them, but the write lock should stop stuff from happening. Seb found a couple of things. Seb found that on Windows, you don't need to be an admin to plug a USB drive in and create a junction and map that USB drive over the top of any directory on C drive. So you can do that. Apparently that's a thing. What you'd then do is I believe you would put the legit update.exe on the thumb drive, which would then appear at C drive, thumb drive, / update.exe. You then do this dance to wake up the updater. The updater would lock that file on the thumb drive, would verify it. From your userland privilege escalation code, you'd forcibly unmount in software the USB drive. The next time it gets accessed, it gets remounted. The act of doing that breaks the write lock, and you then race the execution, try and swap in a malicious payload, and you got local escalation. So they patched that. They kind of stuffed it up because what they did was they started copying update.exe to a known safe location. It's actually in program files because you can't write to it there. Unfortunately, they missed some error checking, I believe. And if you point to a non-existent path, it just goes, oh, I can't, copy that. I'm just going to continue and use that path anyway. Do the race, escalation. The final one was that updater.exe was verifying the update.mar file to make sure it was a legit Firefox update or Thunderbird update. But there was no write locking going on there. So you could do you could race the verification of the MAR file because the MAR file has a signature in it and the use of it, and you could do things like on a multi-user system, install a backdoored Firefox. So if there's other people on that terminal services box, there's now a malicious Firefox that everyone's using. So that was also pretty cool. These are all local bugs. You can't trigger them through the browser. They're based on oddities of file systems and the racing of file systems. So they're not web accessible, but they're pretty cool. So moving on, late last year, Dirty Cow, just to make sure the Linux on the desktop people like myself don't feel left out, Dirty Cow came out, which is a local privilege escalation in the Linux kernel. I'm not going to go through it purely because, A, there's not much time, I don't think. B, Live Overflow has done a really good video on YouTube, which if you're interested in seeing more about how these types of bugs work, go watch this video. If you want to know how Dirty Cow worked, watch this video. Just search YouTube for Live Overflow, Dirty Cow, and watch it. Good stuff. Finally, this is the, as Pat says that Metal calls it, is the dog on a skateboard story. Pat? That's the one. Yeah? Super Mario World for the Super NES actually has a timer check time of use bug that uncovers a type of use after free bug, like in a video game, on a platform that's not a computer, which I think is kind of cool. So in Mario World, when you're riding Yoshi, I think you press the Y button, and it makes his tongue go, bleh. Yeah, there you go, bleh. And when Yoshi's tongue collides with a sprite, the game does a check and goes, is this sprite edible? In the case of red Koopa shells, yeah, they're edible. So it puts the sprite on Yoshi's tongue, and Yoshi starts retracting his tongue to then eat the sprite and then spit it out as fireballs. So there's a difference in the time of check. I'm licking something, is it edible? And the time of use, I've actually pulled it into my mouth, time to eat it. So there's this glitch. The speedrunning community calls it a glitch. We call it vulnerabilities. They call it glitching the game. We call it exploiting the game. Same thing. If you cause Yoshi to eat a sprite that's edible, like a mushroom, but you jump off his back and collect it after the time of check, is it edible? And the time of use, I'm eating it, then you'll notice that there's artifacts. But if you watch closely, there's a different sprite on the tongue. The reason for that is in jumping off Yoshi's back, you're scrolling the screen and this enemy called a charging chuck actually spawns. But because of the time that the charging chuck spawns, there's an empty sprite slot, try that 5 times quickly, on Yoshi's tongue. The chuck spawns on Yoshi's tongue. And then Yoshi eats the chuck. What's weird about this is chucks aren't edible. If you normally licked a chuck, the tongue would just go, check, can I eat this? No, I'm going to come back in empty. So you can eat a chuck. Why is that interesting? Because the game didn't account for what would happen when you eat a chuck. And bad things happen. And when bad things happen, bad people can do cool stuff. So this is Seth Bling. Hey?
How many mushrooms did you actually eat?
These are not my videos, I just stole them. Credits to the people who did actually make them. So this is Seth Bling. Seth Bling is the first person known to have actually reproduced what we've known as being the credit swap glitch for a while on a real console. So what he's done, and I've skipped a lot of stuff, but you can see the glitch being triggered right here. And then the credits get warped too, and Seth gets really excited. But what's happened is a painstaking hour-long fail, retry. Seth Bling has actually spawned sprites in certain areas of the map and moved them around, eat them, spit them out, eat them, spit them out, to actually create shellcode in the sprite table of the game, which is, this video shows a depiction of the sprite table at this point in time. But Seth has actually on a legit console with a real controller. We've been scripting this for a while now. It's a known trick, but Seth was the first to do it. You actually produce shellcode in memory by positioning sprites pixel perfectly. And then you do the item swap and it jumps to the shellcode and sets the game mode to OX1C, which is midway through the credits, and that warps you to the credits and you finish the game quickly. So I've been super impressed lately by the game hacking and the game speedrunning community. These guys and girls, for a lot of reasons, impress me. First of all, they're OG. Like, we've sold out. Like, we're selling bugs, we're doing bug bounties, we're getting good jobs, we're racking up Hilton points. But the game hackers are doing it for the reason we used to do it. They're doing it because it's fun, for the glory. There's no real way you can sell out and start making too much money off tricks like this. But they're doing really cool stuff for the love of it. Just last week, did anyone see the Pokemon, like the wormable Pokemon save file? That was cool. So I've got a kind of mental note to keep an eye on the game speedrunning. I'm just using Games Done Quick as an example of the speedrunning community. There's lots of very clever guys and girls doing very clever reverse engineering and exploiting in video games. So how do we fix race conditions? The answer, as far as I know, is to lock your shared resources before you check them and unlock them after you've used them. So for example, files. Files are tricky, as we saw Mozilla did their best but failed. You apply a write lock to a file after doing a bunch of checks to make sure it's not a junction, make sure it's not a remote UNC path, make sure it's not a thumb drive, where write locks kind of stop existing. You write lock your file, you verify it, you use the verified file, release the write lock. That'll stop someone, sniping it Indiana Jones style and swapping it for something else. Shared variables in code, acquire locks before you modify them, or trust them and then use them later on. Databases, DBMSs allow you to lock your table rows. So lock your table rows, do your thing, unlock them, wrap that up in a transaction, because if you end up in a state where you're in a deadlock, you need to be able to roll back and not have incomplete transactions committed. And when you start locking database tables, welcome to the world of deadlocks. That's really what I've got to say. It was a bit meandering. It was a bit, mile wide, inch deep. But I love race conditions. I think they're cool bugs. So hope you go away and find places in the world where things get done and assumptions get made about the time in which they happen, the order in which they happen. Do stuff quickly and break things. Thank you.